Who's going to kick us off? Hands up, please. The first question. Okay, we'll just get a sound person to you now. Good afternoon. Tell us who you are.
Well, my name's Frank Marsh. I work for Burrell Green. A lot of what I've seen and heard today sounds really as if there's a lot of techie stuff in there. What about these small, medium-sized enterprises who haven't got a real techie working for them? What should they actually do?
It's a very good question, isn't it? Richard, we have heard a terrific amount about the big companies, the huge companies. I mean, even in Wales, someone with 50 employees is a big company. I mean, Wales is a country of little SMEs who probably don't have the money or the person on the payroll who's going to sort this. So what do they do?
I'm one of these guys who do not think that information risk management is a technical problem. I think the solution is, in fact, that risk is not a technical issue. That risk is like, you've heard me say it up here, fire and life safety. And I see the world in that triad of identify the threats, minimize them, and manage. And in some areas you can do that technically, but by and large across the board, it's my experience that there's a process behind the technology that's more important than the technology itself. And we've seen that in firewalls. Everybody said, buy a firewall for internet security. And we bought firewalls and we're still being breached because nobody brought the process to actually the configuration, the patch management, and keeping it up to date. So I think the technology, the geeky aspect that people think, oh, this is a technical issue. It's not. It's a risk management problem. And I don't think businesses of any size have actually done the long division, have actually asked themselves, there are companies, what am I trying to protect? Why am I trying to protect it? And what's going to happen to me if I fail? These are not technical questions, but these are the questions behind any compliance management framework, any risk management framework, and there are no absolutes. If you've ever heard me speak on information security, you know, I'm a believer that information security is computer security is an oxymoron. So the technical issues will always change. We get up tomorrow, there's new threats, new technology, that changes. But the constant is the process of risk management. And I think that's more important and takes precedent, and also recognized in any of the frameworks that we see that we're struggling to comply with.
Martin, what about the little people? What about the SMEs?
Do you know what? I'm going to completely disagree with you. I actually think it is a technical issue. And I think it's, no, I'll agree with some of it. You definitely need to be aware of the problem, and you need to be aware of the issues and what's at risk. But beyond that, for me, it looks very, very similar to my tax form. You know, if you ask an accountant, he says, oh, filling out your tax forms, that's not a technical issue. All you need to know, you need to know a bit about this and divide that number by that one and know a bit about the legislation and get on with it. And I look at the tax form, I haven't a clue what to do. But I know what to do. I get a professional. I get someone who actually is a technical expert and who knows about the issue, and I'll get them to sort the problem for me. I will explain them the problem that I have, the issues that I have, and what I have at risk, and get a professional who's an expert in that domain to sort out the problems for me. It's still my problem, but I'll recognise it's not something that I have expertise in, and I'll get a professional to do it. Now today I talked with a couple of again, SMEs within North Wales who specialise in giving security advice to other SMEs. That's their business, they're experts in it. With your own SME, with any business, they're experts in their own domain and they just want to get on what they do best. The rest, as with your tax affairs, your accounting, you let an accountant do that. With the drawing up of contracts, you get a lawyer to do that. With securing your IT infrastructure, get the advice of a professional. They're up to speed with it. They're the technical experts. Let them, appoint them, but then let them get on with securing your systems.
Do you want to come back on what you've heard, the gentleman who just asked the question? What do you think?
Well, actually, I agree with both of them that there are detailed technical challenges that need to be resolved, but you have to start with what have I got, what are the threats to that, and what happens if I lose it, and what does that mean for my business, and trying to marry that business issue with the technology that I'm using to do my business is one of the challenges I think a lot of people aren't really sure where to go.
And can I just ask you, just a couple of supplementaries, I mean, the responsibility for security where would you want more support from? Do you think that it's entirely your call to sort it out, or do you want support from elsewhere?
I think I'd always need support from elsewhere. I've worked in information and IT security for a long time, but when it comes to how to secure a firewall or where to get the best antivirus software or malware protection from, then you'd really need to be looking at a series of different experts. I like the analogy of, if I'm dealing with money issues, then I need an accountant to do my tax return.
That's the Ken Dodd excuse, isn't it, basically?
Yeah. Yes.
Always gets a laugh in North Wales.
Yes, and you'd go to an IFA for financial advice and a solicitor for drawing up documents. But it's understanding where you can get these things in this field of IT security and e-crime, which is a bit scary.
It is a bit scary. I'm scared as well, but there's lots of people in the room very keen to flog you their services, so stick around at the end. Let's squeeze some more questions in, because I want to hear from you. If you can put your hand up high, tell us who you are, your organisation, your question. That helps our audience online. Who wants to whiz in here with the next question? I'm just going to ask one if there's no one else who wants to come in here in the room. Oh, gentleman in the front here. Okay, just keep your hand up, sir. We'll run this microphone over to you. Welcome. Good afternoon. What's your name? Where are you from? And what's your question?
I'm Peter Hilton. I work for an NHS trust in Greater Manchester. The question I'd like to ask is...
What do you do at the NHS? Sorry, I was nosy.
I'm an IT security manager.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Are these issues properly owned by forums such as this? Or is the issue far greater? Should not the issue be owned partly by the original equipment manufacturers, who are playing generally to the lowest common denominator? They are selling by volume, not necessarily by technical quality. Or is the problem also owned by government, because this is a social problem? Is it not a question of the education of the general population, all of whom are both consumers and processors of information?
What do you think?
I think it needs very firm leadership from government. We live in an information age, far more than any age previously. Sorry to bore you, but I was a history teacher at one point, and we speak of the
left the classroom to join the NHS. Was an extraordinary move.
I don't so much categorise it as left it as escaped education, but that's another story entirely.
Okay, interesting points there. Richard, let's start with you first of all. Well, what about this point about people flogging these services, people flogging these products, who then wash their hands off as soon as they've cashed your cheque, and their failure to take more responsibility for improving security?
I think the problem is largely financially. It's money driven. It's buy this thing to be secure. That's all you need. Was my mentioning that buy this firewall to be for secure internet, buy this anti-malware. There's always something that, and people, I believe people want to do that. People want to just buy this thing and then plug it in and sleep at night. And it's not that easy. And I think. I'm a big advocate of just ownership of the problem. And while the vendors will take advantage of our naivete, and you can be upset with Microsoft or somebody owns such a big market and giving us such an insecure product, at the end of the day, we get what we deserve, don't we? Or we get what we buy. We look how long it took us to put seatbelts in cars. I think, as Martin said, we're a very young industry, and these lessons that we're learning are extremely hard. And until we get angry as end users, until you and I lose our identity or our credit card and start to complain, we can't expect government for that leadership. I think I've never seen it from any government I've ever seen, but maybe they're followers, and they follow what people are upset about, and they respond to that. And I don't think we're upset enough about losing our data.
Martin, what are your thoughts?
Take a lot of comfort from the fact that we are actually here today discussing the issue, and I think already that is a big step forward. And there are forums, government-supported forums such as this, where the issues can be raised. Does it go far enough? Definitely not. The difficulty that I really see wider in the domain is I think we have two fundamental problems which are leading to insecurities. One, the bad guys aren't getting any dumber. Each attack they are learning from, there's awful lot of money behind e-crime, whether that's from the organised crime point of view or sort of more rare and sophisticated hacking. There's a lot of money behind that which is being invested in getting the attacks more successful. So we've got this emerging problems of attackers becoming more sophisticated every day that we've got to live up to. And the other fundamental problem is it's damn hard to write software. Anyone who's tried to write code knows how difficult it is to write code that will do what it's supposed to do. That's one level of difficulty. But if you want that code to be secure, not only must it do what it's supposed to do, it also must never do anything else, which is a whole new level of complexity. And every patch that you see being offered for installation on your PC, I mean, that's evidence of somewhere a vendor has identified that there is a security vulnerability within their software. They're trying their best to actually fix that. But we've still got this massive issue of the complexity of writing software, which is difficult, meaning the software and the operating systems that those are running on are going to have insecurities within them, and we have hackers, we have attackers, we have malware writers who are getting better and better at exploiting those vulnerabilities. Okay. So we have to have a security posture that can live with that and secure us as best we can.
Are you kind of advocating a much beefier role for national governments? Is that what you would like to see? I mean, is that realistic? Is that what you're...
I think it has to be, given the dependence of the UK economy, particularly on e-commerce. I mean, we are a very successful e-commerce country. I think that government has to show an interest. This is something we're good at, and we want to expand it. And I take absolutely what's just been said about the development of software.
And when you say government should take an interest in, you're talking about legislation or a government agency actively being involved more heavily. Is that what you're talking about?
I think in the end, it will come down to legislation. Certainly, if not legislation, direction. So, for example, when government ministries had a terrible track record, 2005, 2006, 2007, we had the data handling review, which laid down on state organisations very firm guidelines for what they had to do.
The NHS didn't come out very well on that, did it, if I remember rightly?
We have the largest workforce in the United Kingdom, and our tripwire is considerably lower than anybody else's. We are forced to be more honest than many other organisations, especially in the private sector. That would be my personal answer, not the corporate answer. It's my observation.
Okay, thank you very much. Any more questions? Gentleman over here, keep your hand up, sir, and we'll run the microphone over from behind. Tell us who you are, your organisation, and your question, please.
Yeah,
Good
hello,
afternoon.
My name's Tom Meyer-Atkin from Carl Camerling International. Perhaps it was for the panel earlier today. We're talking about money at the end of the day, and I don't know if any of you have tried to open a bank account recently, but they require several forms of ID. Now, since the money goes to a bank account at the end of the day, why can't we find the people who get the money and who benefit from this crime? And then we wouldn't have to be here. I suppose it's a question for the Assistant Chief Constable, really.
Well, the Assistant Chief Constable can run up here with extraordinary speed. He'll recently have been on his fitness check in North Wales Police, I'm sure.
So I suppose the question is, why are we not able to track the proceeds of the ill-gotten gains? And if you have a credit card machine, you have to tell the credit card company who you are, similarly bank accounts. So
it's too simplistic, though, isn't it? The reality is what we've been hearing all day is about an international e-crime business. It's not like toddling down to Llandrindod Wells. I mean, it's absolutely massive, isn't it? And presumably there isn't that degree of cooperation. There may be in the UK and maybe even Europe between different police forces. But come on, you can be honest with us. There isn't that degree of cooperation all around the world between different crime-fighting agencies. Is there?
Well, I think the sophistication of serious and organised crime in their money laundering operations gives you a key of the worldwide operation. And yes, there are certain places in the world who do not have the security and the cooperation agreements that we would seek. We do track and Proceeds of Crime Act and such things, seize many millions of pounds from serious and organised crime, but there is clearly more that can be done on an international basis to ensure that the money is tracked. The point is well made. We have some successes, but we would seek to enhance our capability in the future.
Earlier on in the day, we were hearing about the low reporting of e-crime. I mean, there is a very low reporting rate, isn't there? It's kind of like when your car gets the window pushed in and you know your insurance is going to be 400 quid and you just don't bother reporting it. That's where we are with e-crime. A lot of us are embarrassed, so we don't report it. The under-reporting cultural problem is an issue in the UK, isn't it? And beyond.
I think, you know, the under-reporting of crime happens in many aspects of crime: domestic abuse, sexual offences, and of course in this case as well. I think we are seeking to enhance our capability, but in this type of crime, international as it is, the prevention message, the education is at the forefront. But as I mentioned earlier, how we translate that into evidence, different jurisdictions, and present that to criminal justice is still a challenge that we are working on.
Thank you, and thank you for your question as well. Any more questions before we move on? Thank you very much. A round of applause for our panel, please, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.